In my Constitution class, we were talking about how like the Dobbs decision went back to the states. During that, can you like ban Plan B in that process since everything's now at the state level? Because I mean,
well, you can, yeah, I mean, you can take up pretty much everything, but you ain't got to be in legislative session to do that.
Is that something you would? January. Is that something you could do? I mean, obviously after you win and everything.
Just depends on where the legislators are.
But if they're on board, we can do that. Because I mean, look,
I think I'd have to check and see. I mean, there's a lot of legalities.
You just heard from Georgia's Republican Governor Brian Kemp speaking to an individual who caught him on tape admitting that there would be some interest in, banning contraceptions like Plan B, which isn't surprising. We know that the Republican Party has been targeting contraceptives, particularly Plan B, for quite some time now. Now, while he didn't straight up say that that was on the agenda, that's the first order of business should he get reelected, fact of the matter is it is something that Republicans are eyeing. It is something that Clarence Thomas, in his concurring opinion to reverse Roe v. Wade, had referenced. And to give you some more context, where did that video come from? Apparently, there was a Democratic source who handed that over to the Heartland Signal. And Kemp had made that statement during a public appearance at the University of Georgia just last week. I should also note that Kemp has signed one of the most restrictive abortion laws in the country. He did so in 2019, which bans all abortions after the sound or after a fetus has fetal heartbeat activity. And I say heartbeat activity because it's not really a heartbeat, but nonetheless, if there's any sound coming from the heart of the fetus, the woman seeking an abortion would be denied one in the state of Georgia, thanks to the restrictions that Kemp had signed into law in that state. Cenk.
Yeah. So, look, I don't love the argument that they're going to come for contraception next because, wait, they just came for women's freedom. So we don't have to do the next. This thing right now is already terrible. You don't have to worry about the next terrible thing that they're doing. We're in the middle of the terrible thing they're doing now, right? But could they go after contraception? Sure, of course they could. I mean, look, it does. They don't really care how unpopular it is, and so I think 99% of adult women contraception, and Clarence Thomas put it into play. And why? Why would you be against contraception? How does it hurt anybody, right? I mean, theoretically, in the abortion issue, they say, no. It's not that we hate the women or want to control their bodies like we used to in the good old days. It's that we care deeply about zygotes. I mean, we don't care about actual born human beings, but we care about zygotes and fetuses. Okay, but in contraception, there isn't one, right? And they're like, okay, fine. We just want to control women, and we want to use our religion as an excuse, and we want to terrorize your lives and say, you can't do that. You must do this. I'm back in control, and you will do as your husband tells you. I mean, the government. Wait, does that make it any better? No, you know who they are. They've always been around.
Yeah, and it's something really interesting is happening in the country where the leverage that the religious voting bloc had has kind of like waned. Because back in the day, especially after Roe v. Wade in 1973, you had evangelical leaders coming together, trying to find ways to galvanize religious voters, organize them, galvanize them. And back then, there was far more participation in religious institutions in this country. Now there's been a shift away. Individuals who might feel that they're spiritual or religious are kind of rejecting these established religious organizations, which has led to evangelical voters and that religious voting bloc essentially losing some of the leverage that they have in politics. Why do I say that? Well, I mention it because, look, you see this 50-year-long battle culminate with the reversal of Roe. That was first and foremost, that is what the religious voting bloc wanted in this country. Now that it's happened, we see the kind of backlash it has led to for the Republican Party, because it turns out that most people don't agree with stripping rights away from women. Most people don't agree with the government making decisions on behalf of couples when it comes to their reproductive rights and things like that. And so now all of a sudden, I'm actually questioning whether Republicans are stupid enough to pursue like contraception bans after they've seen that the country is not with them when it comes to banning abortion.
Yeah. Well, so I think that the answer is about activating voters. And I think that the voting population has changed in the country. Remember, it's been 50 years, right?
Yep.
But this is a really important point, guys, and it's true for student debt relief, too. So for people who care about abortion, it not only superseded all other issues, but it made it about 100% likely that they were going to show up to vote, right? So whereas other issues might have been tangential to their lives, this one they felt was central because they thought, oh my God, I've got to save those babies. That's the propaganda that they heard, right? But for the pro-choice voters, it was issue number 37 because it was already law. They didn't have to fight it out. They voted on other issues, right? Same thing with student debt relief, but on the flip side, people who don't like student debt relief, they think, well, I don't like it, but it's issue number 37 to me, right? But for people who got student debt relief, it's issue number 1, right? And they're going to go vote based on that. So, but to Anna's point, now abortion used to activate these voters, but number 1, it's now activated the other voters because it's illegal in some places now and potentially illegal in a lot more places if they don't get activated. And number 2, their own side is not as big as it used to be. Evangelical, very religious voters 50 years ago were a giant block of voters. Now it's been whittled down partly because the young are more progressive and less religious, and so they could research things online and they don't have to believe whatever their lying fundamentalist pastor is telling them.
Yeah, exactly. So we'll see how it plays out. I also want to be real, right? So while I can't stand Brian Kemp, I feel like the way that video was kind of like advertised to the world is making it seem as though he said like, oh, it's the first thing we're going to do. We're going to focus on banning Plan B. He didn't say that, but the important thing to keep in mind is that Republican lawmakers and honestly politicians in general, they're not leaders, right? They're not interested in leading. They're not interested in doing what's right for their constituents. They do what they think they exploit issues that they think will help them in their political careers. So the idea that they're motivated by their ideology or motivated by principles or values is laughable, especially when we're talking about Republican lawmakers who oftentimes get caught up in sex scandals, illicit activity, all sorts of things that they love to moralize about when other people are doing it.
Yeah,
right.
and I think you're right. I think that he was kind of trying to parlay that question or get rid of that question because he was uncomfortable because his base wants him to just control women's lives in every possible way. But remember, all he really cares about is his donors, and the donors did not give that command. That's kind of why they're pissed at Lindsey Graham. They're like, we were using this issue as a fake issue just to get tax cuts. Lindsey, you're not supposed to actually force people to vote on it. If you do, we're going to get slaughtered because the American people don't agree with us. They know it too.
Exactly.